really streaming on YouTube?
About it, the high school bike races.
Can you go to YouTube and see if we're streaming? It says we are, but then it also says that I didn't have permission to, so I just want to make sure. Can you hear us, Kevin?
Yes, I can.
We are live on YouTube. Be curious as to whether it's going to be a phone spectator thing.
Okay, it's 1:03 p.m. on September 30th, 2022. Going to call the Grand County Budget Advisory Board meeting to order. President Chris Baird, Gabriel Wojtek, Renee Baker, Chris Kaufman, Kevin Walker, and Maddie Lagowitz. See, so the first action items are approval of the minutes for September 9th, September 16th, and September 23rd. If anybody has a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the minutes of September 9th, September 16th, and September 23rd as written.
Okay, do I have a second?
So Walker second.
I'll second, Kevin.
Yeah, I thought there was someone in the room who could second. Sorry.
Yeah, there's only Gabe in the room with me.
I will be sure to do all the seconding from.
Gabe trying to take minutes. Okay, any discussion or corrections? Okay, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. All right, first discussion items we have are the Grand County Active Transportation and Trails budget. Let me get to a different screen here. Okay, so this budget has a lot of interdependency on a few other funds. So we've got money that comes in from the transient room tax. And in this case, that's to cover expenses related to the Trail Ambassador program. This year we budgeted to transfer $567,000 over. Significant portion of that was from a fund balance allocation. $167,000 for salaries and $400,000 for other supporting programming and equipment. I'm going to bounce up real quick. Right now, I'm showing a $300,000 contribution, down from $567,000, and I want to go over where that figure comes from. So we're going to go up to Fund 23, and this is the rec film convention budget out of the transient room tax. So based on my revenue projections for TRT for 2023, the total budget for rec film conventions is about $568,969. And if I build the budget to match that figure, we're seeing some pretty significant cuts across the board. So, we'd be taking event funding down from $40,000 to $15,000. The Film Commission, this is their salary line items, it's going from $74,000 down to $40,000. Youth Rec 137, that's the allocation that we send to the Recreation Special Service District for youth programming. Didn't put anything down for Moab Art Trails. They haven't submitted a request. And then I've kind of got it laid out, 100,000 for salary, 200,000 for other responsible recreation programming. You know, that can be moved around, but in essence, the total would be 300,000. And then we also committed to helping fund the pilot transit program at the city. So this is an obligation that we've entered into. So this is really maxing out that budget based on revenue projections. So it's a pretty significant cut. And
So Chris, I guess I'm a little, so is that like a 40% drop in revenue for the TRT, this part of the TRT?
yeah. So if you remember, last year, we pulled a bunch of money out of fund balance to fund this year's program.
I see, okay.
So a big part of this money is money that was sitting in the bank that built up over the last couple of years. And so we pulled it into the budget. You know, obviously we had this big stage expense and some other expenses that and we talked about it last year too, that this budget was, predicated on pulling money out of the bank, which can't last forever, obviously. So the other issue I think with 2022 is that these figures are based on a previous projection, which is now decreased. And so even this 2022 allocation is going to have to drop proportional to the drop in transient room tax as compared with our initial projection.
We wouldn't just change the percentages of fund balance versus current year revenues?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I mean, right, so that figure of, a little over $1 million, if I understood you correctly, some of that's like TRT revenue from the current year and some of it's coming in from the fund balance. And then if the current year tax revenue, drops by $100,000 less than we thought it was, one option would be to just increase the amount we're taking from fund balance by 100, unless we've used up the fund balance already.
Well, I mean, it's kind of compartmentalized at this point. And so if we follow the statutory guidelines for what we can spend for rec, film, and conventions, which is 1/5 of 37%, and then we are limited, and we already budgeted to pull the max out of fund balance for that allocation in 2022. So, we made a budget amendment.
Okay, look,
for other,
I think you already answered the question. I didn't realize we had maxed out on the amount we could take from the fund balance.
Yeah, so we initially, if I go over to the revenue side and I show contributions here, this is showing the money that we initially planned to pull from the fund balance, this 463,518. This is how we amended the budget to go up to 1.9 million from 463,000. But this 463,000 was the fund balance for rec, film, and conventions.
Okay, and then sort of a technical question. Since some of that, I'm assuming some of the fund balance was accumulated during years where there was no distinction between tourism promotion and recreation promotion. It's back when the TRT had 2 subdivisions instead of 4. Are we taking that into account when we figure out how much can be spent from the fund balance?
Well, I mean, with the budget amendment, I'm still leaving $1 million in the bank, which was money that I'm saying, we about 600,000 of that was the fund balance from before the TRT law changed. And so there is probably some money that we could draw in, but the big issue with this fund and the fund balance is that we need a certain amount of money in the bank for cash flow purposes. And so, it's just like any business, you can't run with no money in the bank because we have a lot of expenditures at the beginning of the year and no revenue yet. And so you need a fund balance in order to have cash flow capacity. And so even though that $1 million that's going to be sitting in there could be used probably for this, we're running into a problem where if we draw the fund balance down too far, we start running into cash flow issues.
Okay, thanks.
So anyway, tracking back, so I think Maddie and I did discuss a little bit that the full allocation made for 2022 probably isn't going to be spent. You know, it'll have to be reduced a bit to reconcile with the new projections for TRT. But one of the things that we can do is figure out how much of that's unspent and then roll that back into the budget. So we've got this line item also. This line item here is the line item for pulling money in out of the bank. Most of this is paved path maintenance money that's accrues over time. But if we had some excess, or we had a surplus of responsible recreation money that came in 2022 that wasn't spent, it will go back into the fund balance, and then we can budget to pull it back out again in this line item. We just have to get to the point where we can make an accurate calculation about what that's going to be, which, you know, we'll start working on it, but it might take a little while to get to the point where we can accurately figure out exactly how much we're going to spend this year, and also how much we need to reduce that contribution by to match the new revenue projections. So there is the possibility of adding more to that responsible rec budget than 300,000. But again, it would be fund balance money. And so we have to be aware that as we move into the future, that the fund balance money is going to get used up. And if we don't have growth in the TRT, then we won't be able to meet the obligations that we've established for the department and the program. So I am concerned, as I've discussed before, that we're heading into a recession. I'm pretty skeptical about banking on any future growth at this point. But just, you know, something to keep in mind there. Moving on to some other revenue line items. Occasionally have some money in the TRCC, which is the restaurant car rental taxes, that I transfer over, and that's for making, usually reserve that for making matches on trail projects like Spanish Valley Drive acquisitions of right of way, that kind of thing, or any grant match. But I don't think that we're going to have any available TRCC next year, so I zeroed that out. This optional sales tax is the transportation tax that initially goes into Fund 21. This is another interdependency with different departments. So the roads department, we transfer some optional sales tax money out of the roads department. At this point, I'm projecting that we'll be able to hopefully transfer the same amount, even though this tax is also, going to go down relative to our initial projections. I think the B road allocation is going to go up because B road allocation is tied with the price of gas. And so normally when gas prices go up, our B road allocation also increases. So, we haven't gone through the roads department budget. So this is another one that might have to be revised later. 100,000 of this going to our paved path maintenance schedule, and then 307,000 for GCAT operations. Moving on, I've got Forest Service grant. This isn't finalized yet, but I just put in 25,000. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's for work up on Forest Service trails. Then we have our $15,000 grant with the BLM. The state grants, this is a combination of a $17,000 RTP grant and then the $2.7 million for the hotspot project. I'll probably revise this down a bit near the end because we're going to spend down some of that $2.7 million this year. And so I'll probably decrease the 2022 budget relative to what we're going to spend in 2022 and then move the remainder over to 2023 for that Spanish Valley Drive project. But kind of wait until we get closer to the end of the year so I'll know more accurately what our expenses are going to end up being. Donations, I reduced some of the budget down a bit, partly due to not really seeing that level of donations. So 2021, we saw 11,345. And, if we do get into a recession type of situation, then I think donations will probably taper off also. So I dropped that a little bit. We do have an ILA with the city for $30,000 a year for work that happens within city limits, but Maddie and I are in discussion with Colin, and we'll need to set up a meeting with the city to see if that's something we want to continue with. We can't use that money for any trails right now outside of city limits. It would be nice to try to renegotiate that ILA so that we can at least maybe get some money for trail maintenance on some of the trails that are immediately adjacent to the city, like Pipe Dream and Prospector. We'll see. We still need to meet with the city about that. So that covers the maintenance side of Fund 47, which is GCAT and paved path maintenance and paved path capital projects. So let's move on over to the expenditure side. This side's going to have to be revised, as we go. But anyway, do you want to just like walk us through this, Maddie?
Sure, you want to start at the top?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some increases. I think generally I'm going to want to concentrate on the line items that are increasing from prior years,
Okay,
which seems like there's several.
I might need to move closer to the screen, actually.
You want my glasses?
Yeah, it's really good to see it over here. You can see it really well.
Yeah, unfortunately, this program doesn't have the option to increase the font size. Before you start, let me just say for the record that Mary McGann showed up, and she's a member of the Budget Advisory Board. I think Shaylee said that she's going to be joining at 2 p.m. also. All right, go ahead, Mary.
Okay. Chris, can you click on the tab for travel?
Yeah.
And everything broken out. So this includes a few conferences that we go to annually, which are good for us to go to because they have all of our grant administrators there, such as the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation Summit. And the IMBA Trail Labs is one we haven't gone to in the past. I don't know where it'll be next year, but we're losing Tyson Swayze as a full-time employee. And so he's going to stay on hopefully as part-time and train the new full-time person, but whoever we hire is definitely going to need some specific trail building technical training, which is pretty hard to find. So that's one opportunity. This year was in Cedar City, so hopefully it'll stay in the Southwest. And then the International Trail Summit, we went to kind of a similar thing this year. It's also pretty focused on the technical trail building aspects, which again, there's pretty much just one event per year in that arena. Questions?
Okay, moving on to office supplies. So anyway, just for the purposes of people listening who may not be able to see very well because the font's so small in this program, the 2022 travel budget was $5,450, and the request is $11,150.
And some of that's because of that IMBA Trail Labs. I don't know where it's going to be. So and it's, I think, a 4-day course. And so that's budgeting if it's in like Bentonville, Arkansas, for example. And then the International Trails Convention, that's 4 nights, 5 days. So that's a bit longer than other ones have been.
Okay. And then we have office supplies.
So office supplies I have in for 2 desks, a new table, and then the $600 for standard office supplies, which I just based on past years. We've actually never bought new desks. We've been using ones from maintenance that were kind of handed down, and they don't fit our space very well.
So desks and tables would be in inventory.
Okay.
So the difference between like supplies and inventory is that supplies get used up in inventory.
Okay.
It's like, a sub $5,000 purchase that's not really considered consumable.
Okay.
So maybe we try to just move that 650 to 400.
It's 13.4. You want to?
Yeah.
Which, let's see, what's the desk, 400 or 650?
650 and there's, we need 2 of them.
So 650 for a desk?
Yeah. And the table was 400.
All right, so I'm just gonna move that over. So okay, so in the past, it's like 950 and 915. That was just strictly for office supplies, or what did you have included in
I
there?
think that also included some like cubicle dividers, that type of thing. So we've moved offices, I think, twice every year.
Okay. So moving on to equipment supplies and maintenance.
So the number for vehicle maintenance I got from Cody. And then also I have in here for maintenance for the staff that are using their mountain bikes to access trails. That affords each staff member, and I have a protocol written up, but basically if they work a certain number of hours with their bike, they qualify for 2 tune-ups a year, each tune-up about $100.
Chris, could you minimize the Zoom so I can see the 23 request line?
Let's see. Here. Yeah, sorry, we're doing running 2 computers here. All right. So I still have the paid maintenance line at 0, but what I normally do with this paid path maintenance is when we get closer to the end of the year, I'm gonna know pretty accurately what we'll have spent on paid path maintenance. So I'll take the opening balance of our paid path maintenance fund, subtract the amount that was spent, add in the new 100,000, and then come up with the remainder of all that, or the outcome of all that will be what we put in. So for instance, 520,000 is what, we ended up with in 2022. So again, it's kind of predicated on how much we end up spending. And so I usually wait a little bit until the end of the year, because this is money that comes into the fund and is designated specifically for paid path maintenance. So most of our budget line items just reset every year. The money doesn't really roll over, but for paid path maintenance, we do roll that money over. And so the unspent portion gets rolled over to the next year. And that's because a lot of the paid path maintenance expenses are a lot. When you do a seal coat on the pit trails or whatever, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so we save up for it. And then when it needs to happen, we're good to go. So I'm going to recalculate that a little bit closer to the end of the year when I know a little better what the final expenses are going to look like. Okay, fuel.
Fuel increased based on our year-to-date, because it looks like we under budgeted.
Yeah, that's the case across the whole county, because fuel prices gone up so much. I mean, they are dropping back down a bit, but it's probably true that we're gonna need a higher budget for next year. Don't expect to see fuel prices come down too much.
Professional and technical. We didn't get to do the project this year that we were hoping to, but that would be for a mini excavator rental, which is a piece of equipment we've kind of debated whether we should buy one in the past, but with how infrequently we've used it and the maintenance fees on them. We just prefer to rent for the specific instances we need,
So does the road department not have one?
not the size we need. We need like a very specific miniature size one for the trails.
All right. And what project was this?
So that would be for Alonzo.
Is that like a week or something?
I forget the breakdown, but yeah, it's like a few days of rental.
Okay, and then the admin services, I'm actually gonna put in 18,600 right now, but this is gonna be recalculated, and what this is the funds that rely on the general fund for HR, payroll, and administrative services actually pay back into the general fund for those services, which helps keep property taxes down. The way that I calculate it is that I'll take the total amount that HR, payroll, and administrative services cost, divide that by the total FTEs in the county, full-time equivalent employees, and then we'll get an amount of money per FTE associated with the administrative fees, and then multiply that by how many FTEs are in each department or each fund. And so that's how I calculate it. This is probably going to need to go up. The auditors did ask about it in the audit, and the last time I calculated it was 2019. And so I think they want it to be recalculated. Anyway, that's the explanation of that administrative services line item. Cell phone allowance is the same, 2160, and I assume that's for 2 data plans, right?
Insurance was a line that I think we plugged in this committee last year for the building. So I'm not sure if that would be the same or increased.
It's increased 372 this year. So should put that up to at least match what it is this year. Jana will probably get more information on what 2023's insurance is. I think they're in a situation where we were paying, we changed the way that we pay for liability insurance.
Yeah, the trust moved from a calendar year to a fiscal year. And so there's something that we have to figure out. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, because I think what's happened is that we ended up paying for like 1.5 years instead of 1 year this year or something like that. There was something that happened where we're not going to end up paying more than we should be paying, but we're just going to, the period of time we're paying is for 1.5 years instead of a year. Just this time when they make a transition. So I think it's possible that the 314 is probably what it would be, and the 372 is with that added expense, maybe, I don't know. But I think, we'll try to figure it out with Shannon. It's not a ton of money to worry about, but something that we need to kind of figure out across all the county that has insurance line items in their budget. This one, I assume, I don't know if this is a split with the building or if it's just your property. I'm not sure. I have to look that up. Okay, miscellaneous supplies has, the request is 9,300 and 7,400 was the amount for 2022. You historically don't look like you spent anywhere near that. Want to go over let's click on that.
So 4,000, that's for everything that's not basically on a grant and it's not inventory. So that would be hardware, lumber. We want to buy some very specific like bark on logs to do trail lining on some problem spots on trails. Paint, we're probably going to need to buy a lot of paint next year. Volunteer gloves, things of that nature. The boot clothing stipend, that's something we had last year too, because everyone on our staff's wearing kind of like their technical outdoor clothes and then ruining them out in the field. So that helps kind of offset that cost for pants and boots and things like that. Gabion baskets, that's for a specific project. Those will probably cost about 500. We also might get them custom welded, but hopefully it'll still be in that range. And then volunteer appreciation. And I'm looking at it now, it's actually been high because I moved a chunk of it to another category, but that's basically for food and beverages for volunteers. And we want to start having an end of year volunteer appreciation event. Right now we get between $40,000 and $60,000 annually in labor from volunteers. And we get more engagement when we're building new trails, but we're kind of moving out of that phase. And so we're trying to create more appreciation for volunteers so they stick around for all the maintenance, because we do need them.
Okay. So I guess, you know, at some point, I guess I just need to say it that you're not gonna be able to raise your budget. So we're gonna have to cut this back down to match the 2022 budget. You know, there's too much to do in this meeting, but, you know, and we can just go over all these requests. But I think, you know, the gist of what's the outcome is this, we're gonna have to direct you to go back and cut it back to where it's the same as 2022.
Okay.
Because we don't have an increase in revenue. And, you know, it may even be a decrease in revenue, so we're gonna have to hold tight, and, you know, as best we can. And I think that one of the big issues, you know, that we're gonna have is trying to even just match a COLA for next year to the inflation rate. And just that alone is gonna be very taxing across the county. And so I think that probably most employees would agree that might be more important than raising some of these other line items. So, you know, I'm just going to encourage you to try to do the best you can after this to bring your request back in line with 2022. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think what I would like is just go through everything I have listed, and then if there's feedback from the committee, I can respond to that.
Okay. All right, reimbursable expense. So we've got sort of like some generalized categories that are usually associated with grants. So you want to go reimbursable expense number 1.
Sure. I mean, these are pulled directly from our grant application that we have a signed contract for. So this is the amount we expect to spend on materials as listed in our grant, and we'll get reimbursed for.
Okay, so this is related to RTP.
Yep.
That's $17,000.
Yep, and so that's based on, you know, what we don't spend this year that's already listed out in our grant. Same for the 6,500.
What does RTP stand for?
Recreational Trails Program. It's a state grant.
Then number 3 is
So-
another one. I'll say.
So that is, so if we're awarded a grant next year, we've been awarded them every year for the last 6 or 7 years at this point. The grant is awarded in August and then it opens in September and October. So this would be a budget so that we could start spending right away for those reimbursable expenses. Because in the past, we've kind of just started pulling out of line item for expenses number 1 or 2, and then they all get mixed together. So this would just kind of keep them all separate.
Okay. So moving on to the city ILA, like I said, it's kind of up in the air right now whether or not we'll continue on with that. We haven't got anything plugged in, but we'll have to update that later if we do decide to add in 30,000 on the revenue side. We'll probably come with some expenses. But at this point, you know, we're kind of leaning towards at least not having GCAT involved, right? Just because we're too busy outside of city limits, just maintaining all the trails outside of city limits. But, you know, if there's some possibility of expanding that ILA scope to include trail maintenance on some trails close to the city, then that might change. Okay, so Colorado River Pathway Match. This was associated with a grant application that I was successful in getting for the Colorado River Pathway from Utah Outdoor Recreation. However, it was also predicated on getting federal funding and a lot of other funding. It's probably at least $8 to $10 million project. So we got $150,000 grant, which we also had to match 150,000. So that's a total of 300, which is where that number comes from. The performance period is 2 years. So we're, if we really, I think that at the end of, it might be at the end of this year, it will expire. And I just don't see any way to raise the money for that project. So I think this is just going to go away and we'll have to give the grant up. Unfortunately, because I just don't, I've pursued several avenues for trying to raise that money and they've fallen through. The next is the Spanish Valley Drive Trail project. This is the hotspot funding project. And so we've spent, thus far, we've spent $10,165 on it. And we're going to expend more than that by the end of the year. I'm not sure how much yet. It kind of depends on how much we end up paying Jones Mill for their construction engineering. And then there might be some possibility of doing some right-of-way purchases before the end of the year also. But anyway, whatever the remainder that's left over in that project fund will get carried over into next year once I get to the point of being able to calculate it. All right, then we got several line items here for responsible rec programming.
Yeah, do you mind if we skip those to the end, because I have, that's kind of organized differently on my sheet.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, capital equipment.
This is kind of a wish list item, but we would at some point like to start putting away for a dump trailer. This is another thing that we don't have, the county doesn't have one that suits our needs. This is something that maintenance said they could use occasionally as well.
Okay.
So this might not be the year for it, but I just want to get it on there so that it's not a surprise next year or future years.
All right. Then next up is inventory.
So this one covers different software that we use frequently. Domain names for directing folks to our county website. We also would like to do a more public facing website, which I think is in this category. Yeah, $400 on Squarespace. Gaia GPS, that's the software or the phone app we use out in the fields for mapping. SpotX emergency devices, that's our main form of emergency planning out in the field. We don't have cell phone service. The 2 bike racks, one would replace one that's, well, both are worn out actually. That's what we use to transport, staff bikes out to the field. Pretty low on tool reimbursement this year. I think we'll only need 500 to replace stuff that's, hand tools that have worn out basically. The trail counter setup, this is a number that can come down. I actually talked to the roads department. If we buy them in bulk, it goes way down. The 2,500 would be if we buy the full package that has the dock and all the things we need to download it. Which also, if the roads department has, we can maybe try and share with them. This could also be tied to a study we're doing with USU, so I don't know, that might put it in a different category. Signage, this is for kind of rolling over from this year for some stuff I don't think I'll get ordered in time. They're pretty backlogged. They ordered in August, and I don't think we're gonna get stuff till November, December. PC maintenance, that's from that number.
So what is this entail?
It's a laptop and a desktop.
Okay.
Over 4 computers. 2 desktop, 2 laptops, 2 places. That's the one side of it.
Okay, then the desks and the tables that we already talked about.
I think your Adobe might be about $100 more than that too.
That Adobe suite, is that like the CS? Is that the creative suite or?
And we use primarily Illustrator and InDesign, and then sometimes Photoshop as well. And we use them, I'd say, like every day.
Yeah.
Did you?
One suggestion, I know that, sorry, Matt. One suggestion, take it or leave it, but I find like there's services like Canva that are available that certainly aren't as sophisticated, but are pretty effective at
We use
creating.
Canva as well. We actually have a free subscription
Okay.
as a nonprofit we applied for, but we can't do any mapping stuff with Canva.
Got it.
Illustrator talks directly with ArcMap and ArcGIS.
Understood. Thank you.
Did we add the license to you because of Anna?
We talked about it. I'll double check.
Because I'd have to pull up, I don't know.
Yeah.
Big renews in April, so. it's-
Okay. I'm pretty sure we didn't, because we can only have 2 people at the same time, so if her and Tyson are logged on, I have to kick one of them off to use it, which is usually fine.
Okay, so that's inventory, and also just wanted to mention that 142 Shaylee Bryant joined us. She's a member of the board.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Welcome. All right, then on to training.
So this is just the fees for most of the things we talked about before. It also includes money for trainings for me, for a master's degree. And also one that isn't in that travel section would be a woofer for 2 staff members. We took a WUFA this year. I did not think it was adequate. That was a 2-day. And we are often more than an hour from help. So I think that that's something we just, whether it's 1 or 2 staff members, is something we need to have for a department.
Okay, so what's the difference between the tuition one and the professional development?
So that would be rolled over from this year. If you, is there any more if you click the, maybe not. So for this year, I had leadership and management, landscape design, recreation, and resource management as things I would like to take classes in. I haven't had time to do that this year. So that would be probably 2 of those courses, ideally in January would be a good time, and then starting a master's for nonprofit management later in the year would be the dream.
Okay.
And then the Adobe training would be for the new person we hire. It's possible we could hire someone who already has that training, but we use it enough. It's like essential enough to everything we do that they need to have a pretty thorough understanding.
All right, these contributions to other agencies is the Luna, which is the nonprofit that does ski grooming up in the mountains. And then make that contribution for quite a while. All right, ready to bounce back up to the responsible rec line items?
Yes.
So yeah, this is one where we're probably gonna have to whittle it down also to match, the new revenue that we're gonna be able to come in, and then whatever we pull in from a rollover, which isn't entirely known yet. But there's quite a big list here in programming. Maybe it just kind of go over the gist of what we're looking at, Maddie.
Sure. We've been talking to USU about doing a study of program effectiveness that would involve basically, surveys out in the field, as well as a component for looking at different resource damage and how that's affected by educational programs. And this would be kind of tacked on to a contract between economic development and USU that they're already working on. Next one is for printed materials to do with education. So for example, we have a whole enchilada pamphlet we've made with search and rescue. Also our sandwich boards that are out there, those wear out just with being, taken in and out of the trucks and whatnot. So that counts for replacing pretty much all of those twice a year. And then we have some other pamphlets too, like we have an e-bike pamphlet, so it just covers those printing costs and would cover costs if we need to print out things for the hotels, which is a project we've been working with economic development on. The SpotX emergency device plan. So the one you saw before was for the trail crew. This would be specific for the trail ambassadors, but that's our annual service plan with them. So we own the devices already. That's a one-time payment. And then this is, so we're hooked up to the network. equipment repairs and replacement. That would include, for example, the easy ups getting caught in a high wind. We've broken a few this year and been able to repair them, but that would cover the cost of that, as well as tables and chairs and the equipment we have out there. Fuel for specifically the Trail Ambassador vehicles. Day packs, we have a few for Trail Ambassadors this year, but they don't all have them. That's day packs they could, take out with them when they're working. A stipend for the 2 mountain bike Trail Ambassadors. They're out using their bikes a certain amount. And then we kind of move into incentive item realm. So these are all the things that the Trail Ambassadors, if you talk to them, it draws people into the booth, and then also they can perform like a little activity, and then they get rewarded with these different items. So that includes stickers and pins that we have, water bottles. Those are also great for people who show up and they don't have water bottles, and the Trail Ambassadors have water, but that's not super helpful if they don't have a bottle. As well as WAG bags and the stickers we put on there that tell people where they can dispose of them in Moab. It's on there. Anna's also been working on a little dog owner specific thing with dog treats and bandanas. And then the motorized committee, we've been talking with them about incentives for the motorized community. And so right now we have whip flags for that, especially for folks who do a additional training to HB 180. They can go to the MIC and get their whip flag. The volunteer program incentive, this one's a little bit different. So right now we bought t-shirts for Hawksfly, for example. And so volunteers who put in a certain number of hours get a free t-shirt. So this is, great for us because we're getting a lot more in the value of labor than the cost of a t-shirt. And so right now we have a Adopt a Trail program and we have volunteer trail ambassadors. We have 8 of each in the field right now. The business LNT signage, this would be providing the signage for businesses, and this is based on an estimate of over 40 businesses. Building the business training program or the business stewardship program is part of a larger program we've been working on developing. So the in-person cost would be developing a curriculum and having folks perform the training. This is kind of a generous amount because we don't have final numbers for the quote. And then the online component is recutting current film that we have from Mark Finley and then shooting new content to make films that are based on the Avalanche Center model, the Know Before You Go, where they have a series of educational videos people can get certified on. The next one down would be a small business grant to help cover the costs for small businesses to get their employees certified. The social media content. So right now we're about to do a campaign for human waste awareness. And we hired someone to basically develop a bunch of memes for us. So that would cover that, as well as boosting Facebook posts. The more you boost it, the more people see it. So it can be anywhere between $5 and $30 to boost it. And we want to do more next year. That's the Responsible Rec newspaper. So that's the cost annually of putting Responsible Rec ads in each newspaper for the year. Main Street kiosk. This would be basically redoing the maps that are on there and adding Leave No Trace information. Membership fees for a member of Leave No Trace and Tread Lightly, and we get access to all their resources. The uniforms lines, this includes all of the uniforms for all the trail people, because it's all kind of, more about outreach. I'm wearing one right now. The MIC, this is one that is a pretty rough estimate because I don't have numbers for that, but we would like to improve the media at the MIC so that we can show these videos that we're producing. Vehicle maintenance and repairs, that's based on an estimate by Cody. Oops, I have MIC on there twice. Okay, one of those can go.
Okay, let's see, so, yeah.
And then the reimbursement for mileage. So that's if we don't get new department vehicles. Right now, most of the trail ambassadors are using their personal vehicles.
So this would be per diem.
Yeah, so I use the 53 cents per mile.
Then next up, we've got capital. So this is the lease amount. And so 3 trucks, it sounds like, or 3 vans.
3 vans, yeah. And right now the program has 2 vehicles that we have the Bronco that's been around longer than I've been alive. And another vehicle from the airport. And so they're functional, but they're not reliable.
And inventory for responsible rec.
This covers putting a monitor and kind of a conference setup in the Sand Flats conference room. A pavilion at Corona Arch, that's the one where our easy ups keep blowing away and breaking. So this would be a metal structure, which is kind of dancing the line between facility and temporary. And then metal kiosks and trailhead signage. This is a project that I'd like to tackle. I didn't get to tackle it this year, but basically upgrading a lot of our kiosks from wood, which need to be painted and also get vandalized occasionally, to metal, and making them a standard size so that we know how, so whenever we're making signs, we know how big the kiosk is, because right now they're all different sizes.
And final one is the trainings / travel.
So this includes conference fees and conference travel for the responsible rec coordinator. So there's a little bit of overlap, and then some are more tourism based. It also has the Leave No Trace master training, which is about a week long, but then once hopefully Anna has that certification, then she can do a lot more in-house trainings. We don't have to pay for each of the trail ambassadors to get a training from the organization directly. She can just do that all in-house. We also have a wilderness first aid reimbursement for staff who stay the whole year. Moab certified, which is what we've been using this year for our trainings. The bi-monthly specialist trainings would be having different, like a continuing education for the trail ambassadors that would include the staff and also be an incentive to the volunteers we have out there. So having, for example, a geologist come talk to everyone. 4x4 driving training would be for the motorized program, if we get funded to have part-time motorized trail ambassadors. Tread Lightly trainer, that's an online course. And then the LNT training, let me check that one. That one I think we can cut that one actually.
So yeah, I mean, just let's see. Yeah, add it up one more time. We changed the 23.
Hey, Chris, so before we move on from the responsible rec budget, I just had some questions or comments. I don't
Go
know.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm just like doing some calculating right now.
Okay, well, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so one comment on the proposed budget is it does, there is some advertising there on social media and local newspapers, but I think we could afford to do more ideally, and that's something we've been talking about over the years. And then the second comment is that it does seem to me that an awful lot of that, the sort of visitor contact stuff that we just looked at in the budget items is with tourists. And maybe we should think about, funding these items from both the tourism and the rec budgets within TRT. I think that's pretty justifiable. And that would, of course, budget less tight. So.
I think those are some really excellent points, and I would agree with that. I think we do have a lot more room to add some to the advertising budget.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, if it's advertising that's tourism related, probably could use tourism promotion. We do have to remember that, the definition in state code is, that the intention is to bring people in. To the
There's
town.
the definition also has things like establish and develop and things like that. So I think if it's messaging directed toward tourism, which a lot of this is, whether it's direct advertising or just having trail ambassadors talk with tourists up there, to me, I think all of that fits.
Okay. Well, anyway, I mean, that's gonna, another interdependency then to work out before this is finally done. But I would say that, I mean, we're a little over 400,000 right now on these non-salary responsible rec program. And I'm probably, the 200,000 is what I'm showing that we can bring in, and that's assuming that we're not going to steal some of that for salaries, because I'm even dropping the salaries by a third. So we really have to take a hard look at this. It's just, I think it would be a disservice in a lot of ways to hire people, start a program, and then have it run it to the ground in a couple of years.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I think if we look at, revenue that's, not reserve revenue, I think this is both recreation and tourism at the same time. And I think it makes sense for the funding to match that. So. Also, another comment, if I'm looking at your 2022 actuals versus the 2022 budget for responsible rec, so far it looks like we've spent only a small fraction of that 400,000. So does that mean we're going to get a pretty big?
It might be getting miscoded.
Okay.
I want to check something real quick. So this line item over here, responsible travel promotion, this is supposed to be a transfer, but it's been getting hit for expenses. And so there's about 7,400 also. I don't know, are you aware of any other places that maybe the responsible rec stuff may have been coded to?
No, we haven't spent a lot this year.
Okay.
Most of our expenses have been on a few new pieces of equipment for current staff, newspaper ads, a few other things, but mostly planning for these future expenditures. Like the big budget items would be developing those educational videos, for example, like that might cost us up to 60,000. The business program, it's been working with the businesses to come up with the criteria for the program rather than actually making those purchases this year.
Okay.
So it sounds like then it probably between $200,000 and $300,000 of rollover.
Could be, yeah. I mean, if we're going to have to, like I say, the $400,000 contribution is going to have to be reduced by some amount. Probably, I would estimate closer to like 350 is what we'll be able to transfer over.
But that 350 is not including.
Even though we're looking at a lot that can roll over, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, I mean, these are things that we're going to have to work out. I'm going to, I'll work on trying to get a good estimate on what will roll over. We'll have to, I think, Maddie, you'll have to help me like project out what the expenses are going to be through the end of the year. And then we'll be able to calculate what we can roll over. But again, I just want everybody to keep in mind that rolling fund balance money into the budget is something that's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
You'll run out of money eventually. And if you have hire people and they could end up in a layoff situation, if not careful. So
Yeah, no, I hear that loud and clear, point well taken, et cetera. But I do think that it looks like there's pretty significant rollover this year.
okay.
And then finally, kind of a higher level comment. At some point, we need to, within this recreation tourism convention category of funds, we have to decide about the relative allocations. And if we're discussing the rec budget one day and the film budget some different day, that I'm just wondering when that conversation is going to happen. I guess now the right time to have it, or?
Well, we can talk about it now. Like I say, it's all, there's a lot of sort of chicken and the egg issues that pop up. So Fund 23, I'm gonna probably redo all the chart of accounts for it, but it's basically the Economic Development Department budget, and that's where we would discuss rec film convention, this full rec film convention budget. And also, you know, the economic diversification and the tourism promotion.
Okay, so
They're all
if you'd rather talk about it some future time, that's fine, but,
It's actually scheduled to be our last meeting in October. And that's just because it's very complicated, and also I'm gonna totally redo the chart of accounts. I mean, if you cycle through this, you'll see that there's hundreds of accounts that aren't being used. And a lot of them are, you know, from 20, 25 years ago. So it really needs to be revamped. And so that's kind of why I'm waiting to the last meeting to really try to cover it. But I am chipping away at it nonetheless, as I need to. So like, for instance, I came in and did a sort of a quick hypothetical budget so that I know in a roundabout or rough fashion what I'm going to be able to provide to Fund 47, which is the Maddie's fund. So anyway, I mean, do you have anything you want to discuss about this right now?
no, but if you, once the numbers have stabilized a bit, if you wanted to email them out so we could think about it a bit before a meeting and then discuss them at the appropriate meeting, that would be good.
Yeah, I'll send it. I just did a updated revenue projection based on our most recent sales tax collections, which actually dropped everything down again, even further from where it was when we did the budget amendment. And so carrying that across, but it's just the same. I mean, the TRT is actually, I'm projecting it to hit almost dead average by the end of the year, you know, for the full year allocation. So it's not looking super terrible, but that's mostly because the first third of the year was pretty strong. And so I'll just say that I have concerns that if 2023 persists as the second half of the year is looking, then we'll actually be taking in less TRT next year than we will this year. Because like I said, the first third of 2022 was pretty strong. And so there's a possibility that we could be taking in even less TRT next year than this year. And I'm just trying to be, you know, very conservative about where we're heading here.
Yeah, I agree that being conservative in that way makes sense. So.
Okay. So anyway, there are, you know, multiple components to Fund 47. I'll deal with, you know, the capital, like the Spanish Valley Drive stuff, paved path maintenance. But I think for you, Maddie, there's kind of two sort of distinctions to work on, you know, your GCAP budget and then the trail ambassadors. And for the GCAP budget, you know, I just don't see any way to really move more money into your fund to cover an increase from 2022. And I just don't know where we would be able to pull that from, you know. So that's why I say just try to match as close as you can your 2022 budget for GCAP. For the responsible rec program, I guess we got to decide, you know, do you want to spend all the fund balance all in one go, or do we want to taper the program down and make that fund balance last longer?
Well, I think a lot of those expenditures are one-time expenditures. So for example, for this business program idea we've been working on, we need certain things, like we need certain educational films made that don't exist. We need some, you know, curriculum developed for how we want to certify people. And once that's running, it'll be a lot, the cost will be a lot lower annually.
Okay.
Once this exists, right? We have the website set up. So there might be like a website cost associated, but not $60,000 in filming.
Okay, so yeah, I think what we're going to need to do as soon as we possibly can is try to figure out how much we're going to spend this year on responsible rec. And then that will give us an idea of what we can roll over to next year, because that's really going to be, you know, the linchpin of how we build the budget for next year. Because you know, right now we're really only looking, you know, we're going to have, because without rolling any money over, we're looking at a reduction from 567,000 for responsible rec programming to 300,000. So that's a pretty big drop, almost half.
I'll have to check with Anna, but I think most of those big expenditures would be next year.
Okay.
So this year's kind of laying that whole groundwork. Next year would be, hiring the videographers, things like that.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, the sooner you can get me that projection, I can, the sooner I'll be able to work out what that budget can look like. Okay,
Any other questions? There you go. Okay,
all right.
thanks.
Thanks. Thanks. Okay. All right, moving a little slow here.
It's okay. I saw the stage is set.
Next up, we've got Justice Court.
Budget's pretty simple in comparison.
Maybe we'll, after you're done with your expense side, maybe I'll bounce over to the revenue side and talk about that a little bit. I just kind of like guesstimated.
I kind of looked at, I mean, I don't have a way to pool our numbers this specifically, and it obviously any revenue that there would be, but I did look at comparison this year, what our caseload looks like kind of compared to last year, and it's pretty similar. The dates are a little bit different and everything's a bit delayed in the reporting, but I think it'll be pretty similar to last year as of beginning of September.
Okay, here's the budget worksheet for Justice Court. You want to just, I think, mostly a lot of this looks the same.
Yeah, most of it's the same. If you want, I can just talk about, I have a few things that are highlighted that I can.
Yeah, why don't you just cover the stuff that's,
Yeah.
different or changes?
Yes, so in the equipment and supplies and maintenance, I put in there to have a $300 raise. It looks like we might meet that. There's a possibility we may exceed what we had budgeted for, which is an odd number of $633. So I put in to have an increase just a little bit to kind of cover that. And I don't know necessarily what that increase has been over the last year, but it's kind of on track for what we actually spent in 20. Anyhow, slight increase there. And then the cell phone allowance, we are over budget. So I figured in what the monthly allotment is and then made that for the 2023. And my note in there that you can see, so the last year was based on what last year's allotment was, and it looks like that was increased, and I didn't know that, wasn't budgeted for, and here we are. So we do have some extras that could roll over to that.
Okay, so looks like you got like maybe one data plan and one sort of normal.
I don't know. It's just, I can't tell you exactly what it is. I see it in my budget that there's a monthly amount.
I can weigh in on that, Kelly.
Thank you.
It is. So the chief deputy has the lower one right now, the $40 a month. So that's the 480. And then you as the Justice Court judge have the 1,080 for the year.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see. In inventory, we haven't spent that this year. Don't necessarily have to. There are some things that we would like to purchase in the inventory, so we can roll some of that over or do whatever with that and then just count for it next year. But I do have some things that we would like to purchase, and they're kind of held off knowing that where we're at with things. But
So what,
inventory would be
what is
a
that?
desk, a couple of chairs, blinds. Our blinds are very old in our office, which may not seem like a big deal, but we have a ton of sun on that side, so. And then let's see, we don't have I don't think we have anything that was spent. Oh yes, we do have some out of the travel fund. I would just request that be the same. Who knows, I think with everything going to in-person and things, being more available now in person, I think that that's possible that they may, expense there may increase. And then finally, the other increase that I've requested, well, that's in here that I'm requesting is for the schooling expense. And this year we are over budget on that by $693. I don't know if maybe some of that should have been shifted through travel or what the difference is there, but we are a little bit over budget on that. And so next year I would just request a little bit more so that we make sure to not go over budget. We do have 2 new employees. And then we do have in-person trainings available now, which we do take advantage of the online trainings. The court has a great online training system within it, and we participate in that and other things. But it is nice to be able to attend some of those in-person things that are beneficial.
Have you itemized any of that out? Do you know?
I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, is it, I guess one way to
So-
look at it
so
is like,
that
how's it
number-
gonna compare to like this year? for
Well,
instance?
so that number, I believe, only reflects the two court staff that went to the spring conference, and then maybe it might have per diem for me on that or something like that. But what isn't included in there that was attended, that what the county did not have to pay for, was I attended the annual judicial justice court spring conference. The state paid complete expenses for that. And then the annual fall conference, the state also paid every expense of that as well. And then we also are participating in a domestic violence pilot court docket program, and the state has paid for all of the training, attendance and travel to that. So I have 2 conferences that I attended that are week-long conferences that the county did not have to pay any bill for. And those are annual conferences. So I don't know that that'll be the case next year. And those are mandatory conferences. So I think it's 3,000 is a pretty safe bet if you had to factor in if we do have to pay for me to attend those 2 conferences alone.
I mean, we are seeing, some years past getting kind of close to that. Typically not, but it has happened.
So if you look at the 2020, that 2,300 was for, I think the only thing in that would have been for me to attend the new judge orientation. And that was, I was there for 6 days. Because everything else shortly after got shut down.
So, yeah, I mean, any kind of per diem is gonna normally be coded to your travel line item. And then, tuition or entrance fees or whatever would be the schooling expense.
Yeah.
Just-
So I think between those 2.
Okay.
I don't think it would be too far off. Accounting for that, if the county did have to pay for the judicial conferences rather than the state covering it. If the state covers it, I think that, 2,000 would be sufficient, but they don't know that that'll happen.
Okay. So all in all, yeah, it's very close to and I mean, you can see that, the non-salary benefits part of this budget is only 20,000. So it's, the vast majority of this budget is going to be in salary and benefits. And so you've got some notes on having a job description change. Is that going to have any effect on?
Yes, so last year the county did the general salary survey. And I had known that the district court was doing the same thing for the district court clerks, which are judicial assistants, same thing. And they didn't have that done in time for us to be able to have that comparison, whereas justice courts are kind of all over the place because they're not, they're independent of one another. And so the state district courts are nice to look at because it is consistent throughout the state and the jobs are actually really similar. So I do have the 5 job descriptions from district courts around the state. And they did do an increase at the beginning of the 2023 fiscal year. And that there was 3 of those positions increased by 18.51%. And then the other position was 15.9 something percent. And the top position, they didn't have it determined yet. So my goal is to look at our job descriptions, look at theirs, see where we compare with those. I will say that their lowest paid employee position is comparable to our entry-level position. However, it has a much higher cap out of over $4 an hour that they max out at. And that's for the entry-level position. And so we actually have 3 positions in our office. So then once you move up even one step, there's a discrepancy in what that would look like. And again, another $4 an hour discrepancy at the max end of it. So I have some figuring to do, but I anticipate that it would likely be, throwing out a rough number, 3 to 7% increase potentially.
All right, well, again, I'll just make note that we're probably gonna have a very difficult time doing a COLA.
Right. And but I think that it's appropriate that I still make that request.
All right, yeah, I'm just setting the realistic.
I got
parameters.
it. The stage was set.
So, I mean, I wouldn't, dissuade anybody from making a request. I'm just saying that, it's gonna be a tough year. We typically only do like salary surveys once every 5 years, according to policy. We've already
Right.
done it twice as much as that.
The difference with this would be though that there's more information, a huge category of information became available and we anticipated that becoming available. And I believe when I did my request, I did state that I would likely be, if that did become available, I would likely be requesting another increase. And it's pretty important that I don't put all my clerks through the training and then they get taken away down to district court and then we have to start all over again. So it's really important. I mean, we're a matter of a staircase away from a $4 an hour increase.
Oh, yeah. It can
Just-
be, it's, those kind of things are like dominoes, though.
I wouldn't ask for anything that's unrealistic. So whatever increase I would request would be supported and have the information and statistics available. Along with salaries, I request a raise for myself every year. It's appropriate and the state statute requires it. It states that a municipality or county has to provide a justice court judge an increase every year, consistent with at least consistent with what's applied to its county employees. And I have that statute if it's helpful to you, but
So
The
that would
way
be the COLA.
it would be the COLA, and I would argue that it would also match the pay for performance because that is a salary increase to all employees or to employees within the county. The weighted caseload letter isn't available at this point. I think that will likely be similar to where we were last year. A factor with that will be that the district court judges also did get an increase along with their judicial assistants. I think that I think the minimum district court wage now is $190,000. So that will likely affect my wage, but I do have a large gap in there. Anyways, but as to myself, I am the associate presiding judge for our district, just so you guys know that I am earning my wage. I'm the associate presiding judge for our district. I am on the Board of Justice Court Judges, which serves the whole state of Utah, and I represent, there's 9 judges on the board. I'm also on the Utah State Courts Standing Committee on Self-Represented Litigants and Parties. I'm also on the Green Phase Work Group, which is an advisory board to the Utah State Judicial Council that is helping to determine best practices and what we should do as far as court remaining in person versus online and making that available and what's most accessible to the public. I also, as part of that, I feel like this is an honor, so I'm still kind of bragging about it. I was invited to the Western Summit region for western states, so all of the western states participated regarding virtual hearings and what we should do. And I was one of 8 people within the state that was invited to that, including the Chief Justice Matthew Durant, the state court administrator, Ron Gordon, his assistant, and then 1 juvenile and 1 district court judge. So I feel pretty honored that I got invited to do that and spend
Very
some
nice.
time with the Chief Justice.
Nice.
Good work.
Good work.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on the expense side?
Oh, can I add one more thing in?
Okay.
Sorry. Another factor that will not be reflected on our weighted caseload that I think is a very important factor is, I've talked about a little bit about the domestic violence compliance docket pilot program that we'll be participating in. And I think I'll provide more information once we have our feet a little bit more under the ground with that. But that will be something we start on January 1st. It's not a specialty court, but it's a like a compliance court or treatment review hearing where those cases, once the case is adjudicated, the people will then be required to come to court on a regular basis. The reason I bring that up is that will not be reflected on the weighted caseload, in that the weighted caseload only reflects new cases that you're seeing, but it will affect our caseload and the amount of work that we're doing. So any domestic violence case would be coming to court on a regular basis to make sure that they're in compliance with that. And in addition to that, something that I have been doing for the past few years that also doesn't show up on the weighted caseload is just a compliance review or a treatment review that's similar, not necessarily domestic violence specifically, but it's domestic violence, DUIs, some of our homeless people, and just having them come to court regularly. So that's not reflected on the weighted caseload, but if you log into my court, which you're all welcome to do, which I say every time I talk to you, you'll see a number of people on there for treatment reviews or compliance reviews, and that's what we're doing, just making sure that we're increasing offender accountability, public safety, and just trying to provide a better benefit and service to the community.
Just want to jump over real quick and kind of just look at general fund revenue associated with justice court. For the most part, these come in via justice court. So we've got the main one, just the justice court fines. Last year we came in at 305,000. And I kind of just set the budget relative to 2021 for
Yes, I can't
2023.
see that number.
What are you thinking?
I can't see the number that you're,
It's 305 was what we
it was
had,
last year.
what, 2021, yeah.
Okay,
And
And-
so
and this year, where are we at so far?
220.
Okay, that's what I thought. Like I said, I think that the numbers that I'm seeing so far, we're kind of on track. And I don't know what the lag is in those numbers from the date that they're pulled to the date that I receive them. But the numbers that you see, I know that there is quite a bit of lag in the actuals. I think that we would be safe to estimate something similar as last year. I would.
So for both this year and next, because I mean, I did
I
bump it
don't
up
know
a
what to
little.
tell you will happen with next year.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's just like.
I think this year will turn out about like last year did, would be my safe guess.
Yeah.
There has been an uptick recently, but that's not to say that that's not short-lived, so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not like, we don't budget revenue for justice court because we have any direction for you at all. It's just
Well,
that
and
it's such a
The
significant
revenue would be
amount.
more directed towards the law enforcement agencies that write the citations and make the arrests.
Yeah, and so well, I'm just saying, it's sort of something we have to try to do the best we
Right.
can to project, because if we mess it up, then it affects the rest of the whole general fund. So that's why, I bring it up. And, it just, I don't know, when David was judge, he would always say, why do we even have to worry about this? This, and I say, well, You have to, because it's a component of the general fund, and if we screw up this revenue projection, then it really affects everything else, so it's just an important part of
You
the
know,
financial plan.
it'll be interesting to see, I mean, how, I would say, when you get a little bit further into this year, you might have a better idea of where we'll end up this year. That might be the better predictor for next year, but like you said, it does appear that perhaps we're going into a recession, so I would hate to be overzealous on any predictions. But recessions are difficult for people, and difficult times bring on more difficulties, so.
All right. Well, I think these are probably pretty close, I'd say. And once we get closer to the end of this year, I'll have more information to
Yeah.
revise these if I have to.
Chris, I can't see the number in blue. Is that a number that's important,
All these numbers are right here.
or that
Can
we're
you
talking about?
move Renee, like the window just up a little bit so that,
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I don't think that mouse is working. So, there we go. Now you're cooking with fire, Chris.
Yeah, this is, there's two computers running, and so mine looks different than that one. Okay. So 305 is, what I put down, which is basically the same as 2021.
I think that would be, looking into my crystal ball, it says that's a good number.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds really realistic when I look through my crystal ball.
All right.
So Chris, since we spent so much time on that line, could you scroll to the left a little bit just to look at 2019 and 2018? Just curious.
Yeah. Okay, so for 2020 it was 236, COVID year. It dropped right down in COVID year. Then 2019 was 336, or no, sorry, 360. And then the year before, 2018 was 277. 2017 was 310. So you can see there's quite a bit of variability year to year.
Yeah, so it looks like it's not necessarily trending up or down. It just fluctuates a lot from year to year.
And, I think that, once we get rolling with Dan and Lee, it seems like there's a sort of a, some element that is associated with the judge too. But I think that we're all, in the ballpark, it seems to me.
I will say I issue standard fines, which is the judge has the ability and discretion to vary from that. And we also have factors to consider, and I do give those consideration. My main practice is to issue standard fines. I feel like that those are set up and as a standard, and that's most of the time what's fair and appropriate. There are deviations, and I most certainly think sometimes those deviations are appropriate, allowing local community service in lieu of fine for people that are indigent, or sometimes indigent people have absolutely no way of paying and no way of complying, and jail time is what they have to have. Or I also like to give people credit for treatment that they complete. So those are things that likely and do affect the numbers, but I feel like those are things that are appropriate and within my discretion.
Yeah, and again, the budgeting isn't really about discussing your rationale for it. It's just a matter of predicting it.
I just want you to know that that's my goal is to remain on the standard side, and there are deviations, but those are all.
Well, I support whatever philosophy you want.
Well, thank you, Chris.
For me, it's just a matter of trying to predict revenue for financial planning purposes.
I suppose if we went into a major recession, that besides that could be a factor too.
Okay, any other questions for Justice Court?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dan and Leah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Let me see here. Next up, we've got IT department.
That's the second patient.
I've been sitting here patiently. Happy to be here. Mine's really easy. So I think it's pretty short.
Easy's good.
Right.
Okay, you
1
wanna
hour.
roll through here?
If I could just start at kind of top, we'll circle back to the salary note there. Starting off with travel, 230. Rollers, let's see actuals too. I put in $2,000 this year for it. I think I'll probably end up coming close to that. I still got to go to UAC at the end of this year, and I've got possibly 1 or 2 other small trips that I got to take. So I put projections in there for it as well. Did I not stick a number for 2023? Sorry. That should stay at 2,000. I'm trying not to go up on stuff like that. But, office supplies, same trend as last year. I left it the same number. It did increase it to 1,500 this year. And I have a note here from last year that I was confused on what that 1548 was, because it didn't really show the actuals, because the actual transactions was more like 868. And I didn't know if it was billing and we kind of went round circles about this last year. And if it really is 1548, then it should stay up close to that 1,500. But it's like the actuals didn't match the.
Try to see if I can tell. Which one was that? Travel?
No, 240 office
240.
supplies.
This is, yeah, so it seems like there must have been something that got accrued at the end of the year. So normally, like when this detail ledger doesn't match the total, it's because this program, for whatever reason, can't pull anything that's been accrued. So, when you have a purchase that happened in the subsequent year, but it got accrued back. So I don't know if there's something that got paid in January that got accrued back.
I don't know. That was kind of the question at the time last year. So
Well,
that's why I increased it, because it was really going to show $1,500. I don't think I spend that much. What I have down is between Frontier and Verizon. That's usually about $650 or so. I usually spend about $300-400 on office supplies. So I used to keep it right about $1,000, but if it is going to be kind of misconstrued or accrued, or then let's keep it 15. Just
It's right around 1,000 normally. Maybe a little
It
better.
usually is right around there. That's where I expect it to be.
We could probably get it to 1,200, it'd be fine.
That's fine with me if you want to change it to 12. Don't spend a lot of office supplies, but do have some stuff.
So
Next one's
you're dropping that down, it looks like. Is that right?
the.
Or no, we're sorry, this is.
The equipment maintenance does drop to just a couple $100. It's at 800 for this year. I haven't spent that this year. I will. That's for mostly battery replacements for like UPS units for servers and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Next year, I think I'm going to have a couple small replacements, but this year they're big batteries. 270 is IT utilities, and that's the internet service that's getting charged to the courthouse. The last couple of years, it's dropped. I do have that budget in there, 1,000 or 10,080, which is for like a guaranteed type of service. A couple of years ago, Emory called me and said that we're the biggest user of them in the county, and offered if I wanted to try like their best effort service, which would give us faster speeds, but not necessarily guaranteed bandwidth. And we have since tried it for a couple of years. It costs less, gives you faster speeds, but I'm going to move all of our voice over to internet based trunking as well. Oh, that's ominous right there, right?
Better check the floodgates.
Yeah, and that kind of crap right there is exactly why I was moving it to SIP trunking, because Frontiers just dropped the ball with us so many times with their CO going out. But I did leave it at the higher rate there, just in case I do have to go back to that guaranteed service. But that's why you see it being lower in the last couple of years, because it is cheaper and it's faster. We'll give it a shot once I actually throw all the phones and everything on it. And if it starts causing problems, we'll let them need to change that service. 290s fuel. Same thing I'm sure you're seeing with everybody. Fuel costs more this year. I didn't budget enough for even where I'm at right now, $55 over of my $200 request for the year. Like I said, I know I have some travel and other stuff just around town at the support tech and GIS. So we do move around in town, so I do need to increase that a little bit this year just to get through the rest of the year. I put $400 in there to cover the overage that I'm at. And I increased it to $500 for next year. Professional services, this is where it gets fun. Professional services, there's an attachment that's in there.
I don't know if the screen will automatically share this or not. Not. Function. Let me reshare the new.
Or you just share it. Sounds exciting. All right.
Where's this? Where's
So
your
there's my
tab?
spreadsheet. So you can kind of see the columns there, or just kind of tracking year over year on what I break out into professional services into specifically the 310,000 line. These are things that kind of keep everything running, backed up, secure, and otherwise. This includes, you can see it there, the Nova 4, that's the security training. GoDaddy is website registration, SSL certificates, VMware's support. That's been kind of a weird one. A lot of these are, like I said, just support payments. Like we own the product, and this is just support year over year. So in case something breaks or otherwise, we have something to call. Usually with support agreements, they go up about 5% year over year. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes like the Barracuda, the email filtering, and some of the other stuff that's on here. Like they tried to get me like a 13% increase this year. But they generally stay right about 5%. And so that's what all of these basically reflect as you go through. I'd be happy to go through line by line if you want, but all the colors for 2022 show all the stuff that I haven't seen invoices yet on. Okay. And so the projection is that I will run through that 55 grand this year. And then next year I anticipate that it's going to go closer to about 58. I just rounded up a little bit, 7,615 to 58 grand. Before I move too far off of that, do you guys have any questions on the professional services one with 310,000? No, not particularly.
I like these trainings we get.
I'm going to be signing up a bunch more really soon. So they can take a breath. The 310-100, this is called management system. These are tools that I use to be able to track not just hardware, but software inventory, endpoint posturing, that kind of stuff. Allows me to be able to control and be able to see what's going on with people's computers. Also going to be changing the vendor that I use for that next year, but I anticipate it's going to be right around the same cost. Like I said, get 5% increase or so. Backup solutions, we pay dearly for backup. Kevin, you asked a question the other day in my presentation. That's that backup line right there. It does cost money. There's a physical appliance that's here, and then that also pays for unlimited cloud storage, so that it's replicated in multiple locations too. And that's how we recover if we do get some sort of ransomware infection or something else, which I don't even want to throw it out to the universe, but that's why that's there. The next one down is this RMM, and I just threw it here for lack of a better place to put it. But I am floating this. This comes up to $100,000, and that's between two kind of major services there. The first one is what's referred to as MDR. It's a managed detection and response, and that complements SEIM or SIEM. That's security endpoint information monitoring. And you can have a SIEM, which is great. Basically, there's some equipment pieces that are there, and that works hand in hand with the management piece. But it also logs the endpoint after all of this. And if anything you take away from it is it increases our security posture across the board. These tools, the MDR and this SEIMs, the MDR is actually a managed service. So we have the SEIM, which reports and does continuous logging 24 hours a day, handles authentication, all these different endpoints and stuff. And then it's constantly feeding that information to a SOC, that's a security operations center. And they can, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We would pay dearly to have a security person on staff that would provide that kind of a service, and they still wouldn't be able to get the kind of insight that this does. The security posture is something that is going to be mentioned more and more and more as we go along, particularly as various initiatives at the federal level and state level are pushed out from cybersecurity standpoints. We've got to have a number of different reports and pieces and tools in place. This is a big one that they're going to essentially require us to have at a certain point. It's come
Boy,
down.
that doesn't sound good.
Drove my motorcycle.
I drove my bike too, you know, I should have looked at the weather report.
So, I mean, this one,
Go
do you
ahead.
know of which other counties in Utah may have engaged in this?
As far as MDM and SEIM,
Yeah,
there's several that have it in place already.
big ones or any like little guys like that?
Little guys like us, guys like, I'm gonna throw out Wasatch County, which actually doesn't have a whole lot more people than we do. They have a lot more IT staff than we do. They're on it. I know there's a couple other, I decided to say, I want to say Twill is on with these guys, and there's multiple different vendors that can do it. Just trying to think of just this particular vendor. He always goes to UI. His name's Paul Whittier, but there's a couple of different options to look at. They all float, so they're right around 50 grand. But yeah, there's several others that I'll use. It's kind of one of those necessary evils that you got to get into. So even if you had a security team and we were a big guy, like Salt Lake County or something, who has a staff of 120 IT guys, I think, something like that, including an entire security team, he still uses a SOC and these endpoint tools.
Well,
This
it's
is the way of the
obviously,
world.
yeah, I mean, it's a big added expense.
It is an expense. And then the other part of this 310 here is radio maintenance. I've alluded to this a couple of different times. We put in last year and it got approved kind of a weird fashion, in my opinion. I brought it up at a leadership meeting or something about anticipated positions about the radio tech position. And ultimately, we approved the position. Basically, there's a job description that cobbled together. There's money, it's budgeted. I think that's why you see the salary increase dramatically pop up this year. Let's see all the ins and outs. I don't know what the total is. Renee might be able to speak a little bit better on the total that we have to it. My concern with having that position, I don't think we're ready to be able to get to a position to be able to approve a position for it. Because there's a number of different pieces that have to be in place as far as, dispatch and MOUs and that kind of stuff. So, and what we anticipated, what we were talking about that position doing, essentially, working with us on the sheriff's office, emergency management, whatever you want to call it. There's a number of break fix things that need done as far as the radio system. Just base stations and things are out of date, need replaced. There's money for homeland security and stuff that are going to go towards that. But with UCA, Utah Communications Authority, we for a long time kind of had like this kind of, I scratch your back, you scratch my back kind of with an association with them on maintaining our radios, particularly the VHF part of things. And they've moved more towards a model where they're using digital radios, like this 800 piece, P25. They've changed over to a whole new system. The state's really moving towards that fashion, and they're not really supporting the VHF side of things. And so they're trying to clean up their side too, because like I said, these are a lot of good old boy kind of agreements that have been in place for years and decades. And they're trying to take a step back from maintaining things. We're all trying to get a good handle on who owns what, who's responsible for what. And while the position and the responsibility of that position absolutely needs to still stay there, I don't necessarily think having a person that's tied to the salary benefits, all the way jump with it, get them trained on the system. Otherwise, all of a sudden they decide to go elsewhere. Assuming I can find somebody for grade 12, so $26 an hour for a pretty complex system. What I'd rather do is step into an agreement with, there's a local company out of Grand Junction, it's called Two-Way Communications. They run Mesa County Sheriff's Office, backhaul, do maintenance, they're licensed dealers. We work with them quite a bit just because of Mesa County. But to have them come in and take care of all this immediate break fix kind of stuff, like replacing microwaves, base stations, doing all that, but then get into like a maintenance agreement with them that they're coming out so often, regularly throughout the year, however that looks like. But to maintain all the VHS stuff to where it actually needs to be, to work as in coordination with UCA. So if something does break down here, that's be on their network. Then we can kind of have a bit of a qualified technician to be able to run out there. Because the way the UCA is running it right now is that they're keeping everybody up at Salt Lake, all of their techs and otherwise. If they want anything, if you need anything fixed down here, it's pulling teeth to get anything done. So anyways, what I'm suggesting is to take money out of that salary line item, which should be way more than 50 grand for the radio tech position. I don't really want to get rid of the responsibility per se, or get rid of the job description, because it's an important part. I don't want to get lost in somewhere. But I think if we did just a not to exceed maintenance agreement of 50 grand, it keeps it under that purchasing policy. It reduces the overall cost that we'd be paying anyways if we were to hire somebody. And it throws it into a professional service, so that we kind of create like this SLA. It's better business continuity. I mean,
So basically suspending the radio tech job for now, not necessarily forever, but, and then allocating this 50,000.
down to that, yeah. But,
So we're talking, the MDR scheme is like 50,000, and the radio maintenance agreement is 50,000.
that's 50,000 as well.
So
That's what creates the 100. But again, if you take it out, if you remove that part out of the salary,
but probably end up being close to net zero, because I've got the radio tech position is close to 100,000.
exactly, once you include
With
salary
benefits.
benefits and everything else along with it.
So salary and benefits combined, yeah. I mean, it's probably not quite that much. It's probably more like around 80, 85, all that, but
That's what I think that, because Renee and I talked a little bit about it. It seems like it was right around in there, like 85, something like that. But it would really depend on, you know, if they took a family plan or something else, or.
Oh, yeah, family plan would be 100,000.
And then again, to be able to get somebody in that's qualified, I would expect to be paying not just an entry level rate for them. I think we paying, you know, $35 an hour, if not more, for a person.
All right.
Anyway, that's probably the biggest change in there. Anything further than that gets in GIS, the 4104320 is GIS.
So our bill's going up.
The bill went up this year, and that's the 27.5.
Okay.
I did budget 25, not knowing that they were going to increase that on us. So that is a little bit over budget already. But I'm coming in under on some of the other things this year. So I think I'll still be fine. I think I'm going to overexpend, but next year will be the 27.5. Cell phone allowance, a change of projection for the rest of the year to 1,600. And my cell phone allowance on this budget has kind of perplexed me over the years. I get that, you know, directors are, you know, 10,080 over the year. You know, like not a director, they get the $20 or $40 a month.
Well, it
$20
depends
pay
on
period.
what you're requiring your employees to do, you know, so. If your employees have to have access to data on their phone, then we do the data plan. And, you know, but
But it
it's got to be, you know.
it seems like there's two different tiers. I mean, but I know Renee brought it up. I don't know if she could say it again too, but I know mine, like I get 90 a month, so it's like 45 period. But Kenny's getting the 20. And then I'm gonna have to
Kenny's
take
getting the 40 a month and you're getting the 90 a month right now, Matt.
like per pay period. is all I'm
If
saying.
Kenny, though, if you're requiring him though to use data on his own phone, then we probably should bump it up to the.
Well,
data.
that's what raises the question is that, like, when Jacob was here, it seems like we were giving him the higher rate too. But then when he left, it's all been kind of moved around.
I don't know. It's
I don't know what
actually-
the policy says.
The policy says that you decide.
Yeah.
The policy says that you have to be a supervisor to get the higher rate.
So
So,
it's it's the discretion of the department head to determine what level of data or cell phone plan that they're.
so what I've said before is that I expect them to have their data plan otherwise. And that's where the 2160 came
Yeah,
from,
that's two data.
was for me and my assistant to have full data plans.
Okay.
If that's going to be the case, then I need to increase that to account for the GIS tech specialist to have it as well. Because I will be having him out in the field running around with phones and data and collector apps and blah, blah, blah. So that should be about 60 or 10 acres. Special department supplies, there's just cables, junk and terminators and things that are kind of consumables. I expect that to stay about the same next year. I need to buy some stuff this year. Inventory, I threw a couple $1,000s in there. I got a little bit of a question on that too. So my inventory, the $2,000, I wanted to get some furniture. Like, be able to get a little bit better desk for Kenny and another chair. And Kenny's computer died this year. It's under warranty and we sent it back in, but then they turned around and told us that they couldn't repair it and that they didn't have a replacement to be able to send us. And so they sent us a credit for what they thought.
Excuse me.
So that's why I have a weird number,
$139.
right? And on top of it, there was a miscode, and I've since fixed that with Christie this morning, of 305 that was charged to that account. It was the Microsoft license that should have gone over to administration's office. Like I said, Christie fixed it up this morning. But that's why it's a weird number. They gave us that back, the 443.90 That's what they thought that the computer is worth. Ridiculous. Anyways, Kenny's running right now on a used computer, like one that we take out from somewhere. I mean, it turns on. I do need to replace this computer. And I don't know if you'd like me to do that this year. Obviously, that's not the price for a new computer. I don't have money for a new computer this year. I've got.
Well, I mean,
some
if it's-
credit.
If you need it, I mean, see,
I mean, we do,
Have to deal with
we can limp through till the end of the year with what we've got. And that's why I just threw the 2,000 for next year, because.
well, I mean, it's gonna be like a one-time expense. So you can either put it this year, we can either, do an end of year budget amendment this year or put it in next year. But one or the other, not both,
Let me take a let me double check it, because I'd hate to go over this year. I don't think that I will, like overall for the whole budget.
Yeah.
Particularly because the schooling expense, I am dropping that down. We haven't been able to get out and do, and frankly, until I was planning on sending him to some different trainings and stuff, it just didn't happen this year. So I'd like to keep that up at $5,000 for next year, but for the rest of those, so a couple of trainings and things I'd like to get done for the rest of the year. 1,500 should cover it.
All right. So maybe, you can go in and just add some note about what the inventory is comprised of. Usually try to have some kind of list there.
Yeah,
So, and then again, if you do want to go ahead and purchase Kenny's replacement computer, I mean, you can put it in this, you can adjust the budget up. We'll cover it again when we do the final budget amendment.
but you'd rather see it purchased this year. You think using that credit before the credit?
It doesn't matter. I mean,
What's gonna
it
make it
doesn't
more
matter
efficient?
because
That's
it's
for
going to
you.
be the same amount. Of
I would
money,
do
right?
what's gonna make your office the most efficient.
I've got so much stuff to do. It's turn around and get it this way. Yeah. So I don't
Anyway,
know. It needs to get replaced.
I guess I'm just saying, you can do it this year or next, but
Okay.
the budget for it should be either in this year or next, but just not both. And so if you do add it to this and it was already in that, then take it out of that, and put it over in.
Absolutely. I'll do that.
Okay,
That's it.
all right.
Wow.
Anybody have any questions for Matt? The IT stuff?
Thanks for all you do.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for all you're doing.
Anybody on Zoom that has any questions?
Sounds like a no.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Thanks for keeping track of all this, Chris. You're doing a good job.
Trying. There's a lot to try to keep in my brain.
Stay doing more and trying to succeed.
Yeah, no, you're doing a good job. I've sat and watched you go through these things. And
Okay.
lots of numbers,
Oh, it was
all sorts of moving pieces.
knowing which revenue source you can use.
Exactly.
It's complicated.
All right, Elisa, are you still on?
See her a minute ago.
I'm here, you guys, sorry.
Sorry, we're running a little behind, but we're up to your planning and zoning department now. It's up next.
Okay. So are you bringing this up or do I share my screen?
I've got it already shared.
Looks like,
Can you
okay.
see it?
Yep, I see it.
Or you can share it too if you want.
No, that's perfect. That's what I have on my screen as well, so perfect. Okay.
Start off with subscriptions and memberships. I'll bring up this little worksheet.
Yep, so basically, this is not change, oh, this is going up a little bit, yes, because we do have the code publishing subscription, or I guess, I don't know if that's just it's not like a regular amount, but we pay every time we update our land use code, and we have to have the entire code revised and reformatted, I guess. So I looked back at 2021 and it looked like we spent about $1,500 on that.
It was all kind of various amounts, so I just averaged it out at like 500, 3 times, sorry. They're going crazy with the rain and the hail and the lightning and thunder.
Yeah.
Then we also have the, just one second, let me see if I can get that one to, that's all right.
So, I mean, and it looks like you're wanting to bump it up for this year too, right?
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so basically, I'm looking at, we did pay for our American Planning Association membership dues for Jenna and I think John also had that last year, or this year, sorry, for 2022. But for 2023, I'm hoping that all 3 planners will have that membership. So myself, Jenna, and then the planner one. And we also are going to be looking at getting AICP certified. So that's an extra little, that's an increase to the APA membership dues. So that's what that would be. Also, and then Planetizen is a current subscription that we have, and it helps out with all kinds of amazing trainings. They're online trainings. They're great for our staff. There are also some offerings for Planning Commission, which I don't think we have recently used that with the Planning Commission, but we have some new members, and I think it'd be great to start using that at Planning Commission some more. So I think that's it for that one. Does anybody have any concerns with that increase?
No, I mean, it's actually less than what we spent in 2021. So,
True.
I mean, I'm a little more concerned that, we might actually need more in the budget for this year too. I mean, you did increase it by 500.
Mhm.
I don't know. We'll play it by ear, but I think it's a good amount, relative to what we've been spending.
Mhm.
It's less, in fact. I'm not entirely sure what the full thing was in 2021. Maybe I can look really quick.
Okay.
So yeah, we had 2 code publishing bills, and it looks like they bill us depending on probably how much work there is associated with the codification.
Oh, yeah, and then I didn't know what the CDW government is. I saw that, but I wasn't sure.
That's
If that's
normally
something
some
we
kind of
currently-
inventory. It's just like a purchasing cooperative that we use for office
Computers.
stuff, usually like computers, office furniture. So it's probably some kind of purchase that's related to either like computer or desk or chair or something.
So that's probably not coded correctly,
Yeah, it might need to, I mean, it's too late now. It's from a prior year.
but it wouldn't
I
apply
think-
to subscriptions.
Yeah, okay, so anyway, so yeah, that's probably why that year was so high, just because there was perhaps something that got coded in the wrong spot, but
Okay.
so, I think that's good. So public notices, going up some.
Yeah, so that is because we have been realizing with our public workshops that I think we're going to be continuing through 2023. Those, we're trying to really get a lot of participation in public engagement. And so we've been spending a little more on putting ads in the papers, and then also on like social media. We've got our Facebook page and our Instagram. And Noelle, our new Vista, has been really savvy with, using those mediums and to their fullest potential, and kind of paying the extra little fees so we can bump up our circulation with our ads for the public workshops and try to get as many people to come. And so that was based on our last effort. I think it was around $900 that we spent all together for those 3 public workshops.
Okay.
So I was kind of estimating around maybe 6 workshops that we have that we'd want to have, you know, and maybe they're not called workshops, maybe they're something else like a town hall or some other kind of public engagement. But I see that being we don't have to pay for public notices per se anymore in terms of like noticing for public hearings in the paper. So that's kind of gone away. And I feel like right now we're just replacing that with the public engagement aspect of public noticing.
Yeah, I mean, there's still some, depends on, you have to really track closely with state code on things, but I think, yeah, you're right, that some planning and zoning associated public hearings don't need to be noticed. It's not the case across the board though, just as a caveat.
Right.
Like for instance, I still had to notice the public hearing for a budget amendment. But anyway, it seems like, you know, in the ballpark, we have spent more than that, you know, in 2020, we spent 3,400. So, you know, it seems like a decent amount, you know, a decent request considering what you have planned. Okay. And then
Okay.
Travel, you want to go over so this would be like per diem.
Yep. Yeah, it's not changing. We still have some left in our budget for 2022. I do foresee using some of that still through the end of the year. I know Josh is going to be traveling for a conference that has something to do with code enforcement. And there's probably, you know, 1 or 2 other conferences or things that we're going to need to be traveling to, or my staff will be. So yeah, and those, I can talk about the conferences a little bit more in the schooling line item, but that's kind of, it's basically like the APA conferences, the
So yeah, I mean, we've kind of been a little sporadic about some of this stuff. I mean, this would be, you know, probably if you did everything that you're thinking of doing, then that's how much we'd spend. I mean, typically we don't end up spending that much. But, you know, like for instance, 2020 was 1,400, even with COVID. And then 2021, for some reason, was only 87. Now we're up to 1,500 in 2022. So I'm not sure we haven't really gotten up to, you know, the most I'm seeing in the last while. So I mean, in the past we've seen some higher figures, like in 2020, 5,000. So anyway, it's kind of in the middle, I guess, of some of the bigger and smaller years.
yeah.
It looks like maybe Zachariah must have done a lot more traveling. You're one of the department heads.
Yeah, I mean, this year we only went to like one of the local, or some of the more local conferences. We went to the Utah APA conference in Kanab, so that wasn't like a super big travel expense. But I could see possibly sending somebody to the National APA conference, which those are all over the country. And then was there one other one? Oh, I was telling you that we had Noel, our Vista, go to the Climate Solutions Conference in Colorado. That's the Mountain Towns one that was actually really great. And I want to have somebody go to that again next year. So
I think it's fine. I mean, it's you know, it's kind of in the middle of historical spending, so I think it's all right.
Okay, good deal. As far as office supplies and expense, I think we might have coded some of this wrong back in the day for 2022. So we're a little bit over budget already, and it's not even the end of the year. I think I'm going to try to figure out, I think some of that should have gone into inventory, which we're also really close to hitting our budget for that this year as well. But I think, you know, we had a lot of changes this year. We had new staff. We had kind of totally rearranged the office in terms of setting up our associate planner station a little bit more to have it so that people can walk in and actually sit down and have, you know, put out some plans on a big desk. And so, yeah, we've just we've revamped the space a little bit because we had a full staff and now we're down one, but we're going to have a full staff again pretty soon, hopefully.
Okay.
But I think we're pretty well set on inventory, like, and I feel like that kind of should have been more of the office supplies and expense is that stuff. I think that a couple of the desks probably got charged to that account, which was a mistake, but we'll fix that for sure. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Okay.
The other thing about office supplies and expense that I'll just say is I think a lot of that comes out of code enforcement's expenditures for sending out letters and correspondence with people. So.
Okay.
Okay, and then equipment maintenance and supplies. I looked into the past expenditures for this, and it looked like we were charging to this account for like auto repair and maintenance. So we've hardly used any of that budget this year. So I don't really know. It's a little bit of a mystery to me if we need even 800, but I definitely thought it could be reduced. Unless you have some other information to.
Well, so we replaced the old clunker cars with new enterprise leases. And then Josh also has his own lease as well. So I think it's anticipated that our maintenance costs are going to go way down to just basically the price of like an oil change.
Okay.
So I'd say that we can really, you know, reduce this down quite a bit, you know, maybe just like to a few $100s just to cover oil changes, windshield wiper blades, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that we can just pull that one down unless, you know, like, I didn't see that you were charging any kind of copier maintenance agreement or anything like that. Do you have any, do you have a maintenance agreement for your copy machine or anything?
We must, and I know it's with Desert West. They come in periodically to check on our copier, but I'm not sure how that's been coded. It should go under this, so maybe just going forward, we'll be thinking about. But honestly, I don't recall ever getting those invoices from Desert West. So I'm wondering if they go somewhere else, if they get sent to the clerk's office or.
Might not have one, you know. I think that we gave you the commission's the big copier that we had, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have the one that
maybe we still do have the contract, but it's getting billed to the commission's office still.
That's very possible. Yeah.
Let me just go look up and see if anything's hit. The administrator's office on their equipment line, because maybe it's just stayed. Well, I'm not seeing it. Anyway, I guess just make a note to check up on that. And then if we need to put it back in the budget, let me know.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm gonna prop this down.
Yeah. Do you want me to drop it down or are you going to do that, Chris?
I'll do it right now.
Okay.
Let's take it down to like 300, which should be fine. Okay. Then fuel. Let's see. I think 500 is good.
I think so
And
too.
it
Yeah.
will still, I think it would even cover the higher costs. Because, haven't really been hitting you 400, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just for local countywide traveling, like for site inspections and stuff. So it's not like long trips or anything.
Okay.
Software. So this is changing because we have that subscription to Bang the Table for Grand County Connects public engagement website. And I don't know, it must have been just that this was when, I'm not sure when that came into play, but the $10,000 that was allocated for 2022, that could have been just for Bang the Table, but we also pay for iWork, and actually I think that's it for our software. So for the professional technical services, as far as I'm aware, that's just software expenses, and that is a big expense for that public engagement software, but we have been using that website quite a bit, and it's been really useful. We've been putting out lots of public surveys and getting feedback from citizens. We also put all of our projects, current projects and things that people can kind of keep up to date with on there. I've talked to Matt a little bit about, well, he talked to me about the idea that Civic Plus could actually do a lot of what Bang the Table does, but maybe we haven't figured that out yet. So I want to look into that and see if there's possibility that we could actually use our Civic Plus webpage for planning and zoning in the same way, and if maybe it's Bang the Table is not actually necessary. Be a
All right.
big saver.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty expensive.
It is.
iWorks is actually, your contribution to iWorks, I think, is $3,025.
Okay.
Oh,
there it is. Yep.
What was Granicus? I can't remember.
Oh, Granicus is no longer. That was the software that EDD uses for tracking nightly rentals.
Oh, yeah. So, well, don't we have some kind of contract for that, though?
I believe it expired, and they're working on trying to secure a new software for that would be tracking, yeah, the illegal nightly rentals in like a better way, a more kind of comprehensive way. And I think August just needs to, I think he has the budget for it. He just needs to decide which vendor to go with. And I thought that was going to be covered not by our department. So I don't know if we would have a share in that in that software anymore.
Well, yeah.
But
Guess we need to have more conversations operationally speaking about who's going to be involved in TRT enforcement.
mm,
But anyway, okay, so for this one, I just bumped down. So
Yeah.
I guess, maybe think about the Bang the Table thing. And, it'd be something like it's, it's certainly possible that by the time I get near the end of this budgeting process, that we're gonna have to make cuts across the board. So it's like one of those things that is on the chopping block, I guess.
yeah.
Just, a lower priority thing. It's nice to have, and it's done as well, but might be something we need to cut. But
Yeah,
we-
and I think actually part of what our new planner position would be is to kind of handle a lot of that tech side of our department and work on really getting our websites better and more, just more user friendly and have everything that we're working on. It's a little better. We've done a lot of work on it already, but that position specifically could be looking at kind of maybe doing away with Bang the Table if possible, or just kind of evaluating the need for it in general. Because I don't see us, personally, I don't see having the time right now to do that. So I don't know what the timeline is for making that decision, but.
All right. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Code enforcement, so this would be like the non-salary side of code enforcement.
Yep.
I think we have kind of split out the
Yep.
amount though, so that's in capital. So
Yep.
I think when I originally maybe, was considering like the 30,000, it was in relation to the possibility of doing like really big cleanups out of Thompson Springs or wherever. And I know we've done some of that, at least in 2021. But so it sounds like though Josh is saying that 15,000 is the most you can think city could probably spend on these kind of things.
Yeah, he's still working with the waste district to figure out a cost or a number that they come up with for the vouchers that he wants to purchase. And I think that's where most of the money will go towards is that voucher program. So that's still kind of, I guess, because they had that recently the transition from the previous director there or whoever was in charge, and now there's somebody new. And I think there's just been a little lag time in getting that final cost for what the vouchers would be and getting that in place. But our goal is to have some of those vouchers purchased by the end of the year for sure and spend some of that money. But it's just not happening it as fast as we thought. And he also mentioned that it's been difficult getting residents on board to kind of for the community buy-in for the program.
Well, but I do think that in a lot of cases, if there's a code violation, that a lot of the times the property owner doesn't really have the means to even resolve the issue.
Sure.
So I think
Yeah.
it's important to have a budget for assisting in indigent circumstances. So
I agree. Yeah, we definitely want some budget for that, but I don't know, just based on this year, we haven't been successful yet on spending that much.
well, anyway, if that 15,000 figure changes, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay, planning projects, looks like we've got phase 2 of the housing study. Is this going to be with BAE or whatever it is?
Mhm. Yep,
Okay.
exactly. That would be looking at, oh, go ahead.
Are we going to pay off any of that this year also, or is it all next
So
year?
the phase 1 part of the study is happening now and will be kind of going probably a little bit into 2023, but that's paid for through the grant from EDD. So planning and zoning doesn't have a budget for that because that's coming out of that grant. And then phase 2 though would be happening in 2023 for sure. And then yeah, and it's estimated to be about 60,000 for that. And I can describe what the study is if you would like or not.
Oh, no, that's all right. It's
Okay.
a study for relating to housing. We can't go into too many operational details or we'll be here forever.
I know, yeah, you guys have been there. Totally. Okay, so we move on.
Suffice it to say that affordable housing is a high priority. Okay,
Wait,
so
what?
planning, I'm just saying it's, sufficient to indicate that affordable housing is a high priority.
Right, yeah. So the other thing that comes out of planning projects is not just the studies, but like other costs associated with putting on the workshops. Like whenever we have to get food for a workshop, or the large format printing that I've been told by the recorder's office that needs to come out of our budget. And I think there's just some other supplies that we end up getting that kind of go towards, I've been coding them to planning projects as opposed to office supplies and expense. So that's why I put that extra amount in there. I don't know if it would actually be 20,000, but the other idea was that we might need to get some help with some of the workshops, or possibly even just having a contract out some of the work to finalize the land use element and make it look pretty. And so that's kind of what that idea was for that line item.
All right, I mean, it's a little nebulous, at least for that amount of money.
I can get more kind of detailed with that with a bit of time, for sure.
Yeah, if you could just go in and maybe detail that out a little bit more.
Okay,
And yeah, I mean, for some things like, you know, catering or whatever for certain events, I mean, most departments have like a special supplies line item, but you don't have one, so
right.
I don't know, maybe you send me an email just with the subject heading of special department supplies, just to remind me.
Okay.
Maybe go in and create one, because it would, you know, most departments have one. I don't know why you don't, but that's, you know, where we typically would bill, if you had to cater a meeting or something, that's where that expense typically would get charged.
Right. Yeah, that might be good to add that line.
Okay. So then moving on to planning grant.
Yeah, that 16,000 is for the matching funds for the UDWR boat ramp grant, which it's still in process, and I don't see it actually being awarded until probably the end of this year, and then work will be done, and then the money would have to be allocated for that in 2023. That's how I understand that timeline.
What's the other side of the grant, like the non-matching component?
I believe it's around 42 or 45,000, and it's for the engineering work.
So we need a budget for that though too, if we're expecting it. Let's see. So that's a UDWR boat ramp grant.
Mm-hmm.
And what approximately did you say you were thinking it would be?
40, I want to say it amounted to 60,000, so maybe 44,000. I can look it up.
All right, well, maybe just make another note to email me later what it is. I'll put in 40,000 right now, and then when you email me what it is, I'll go back and fix this. But if we're expecting, you know, a component of revenue, then we need a budget for that also.
Okay, then that was going to be another question then too, with the grant funding from EDD. Do we need to have that money transferred over to P&Z so that we're paying BAE out of our, because I've received one invoice from them so far for the housing study, and that money would be coming from that grant, so I wasn't sure how that process would go. But
yeah, send it to me. We could probably just code it straight to the expense line for that grant.
okay,
But for this boat ramp one, we'll budget the amount coming in on the revenue side, but then we need to budget the entire amount of expenditure in your budget. So not just our portion, but the total amount.
okay, got it.
What do you figure the total amount is?
Well, see, we've only, I mean, we have a phased project, and so this first phase is only the 60,000 or so. And then we would be applying for another grant for phase 3 or whatever, phase 2 and phase 3.
Just whatever we're going to expend in 2023.
I'll have to think about that because I don't know, we haven't applied for another grant for the phase 2 or whatever it is.
Yeah, so, but you get what I'm saying, like, we have to budget for the full expense because it's gonna be probably project reimbursed. And so that means if we get a grant from UDWR, they're gonna probably reimburse us. And so we'll end up having to spend the full amount, the full 60,000 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we
Got
have to budget for that. And so
Right.
just the thing to realize about budgeting is we never budget net amounts. We have to budget the full revenue and the full expense on both sides. And then it will
Okay.
net out, like there'll be a net cost to us when it comes out in the wash between the revenue and the expense.
Okay.
But, so if we say, for instance, that we're gonna hope that we're paying 16,000 and then there's 40,000, that'd be like 56,000 or whatever, that we'd have to put into this line.
Okay, I just found it. So the total cost for this phase that we're applying for this work so far that we have is 64,000. And then out of that is 16,000 is our in-kind contribution. So the UDWR grant that would be awarded is 48,000.
All right, let me go up and do that again up here. Okay, got that. Okay, I think we got that figured out, man. We got 48,000 in revenue and 64,000 in expense.
Yep, that looks right.
Okay. Then engineering fees.
Yeah, so this is kind of a mess in terms of our year to date. We haven't come to the bottom of it, but I did check on our end that we have been coding those invoices correctly to the clerk's office or to Christy. And I don't know where it's, how it's not showing up.
Did you get the response from Christy about that? Because she sent out a spreadsheet with all the payments that we've made.
I saw that and I looked over it and it looks like everything that we've sent her is in her spreadsheet, but that number is not totaling in Cassell for some reason.
Did you look at where they were coded to on her spreadsheet?
Uh-huh. Yeah, there's some, she printed out her spreadsheet was for the vendor for Horrocks. So it's not just our P&Z invoices that are on there, but it's also from Bill Jackson's road department. And I think there might be one other, but I did see where all of our P&Z invoices were and that we've been religiously sending those over with the correct code, which is this 4180340.
Yeah, well, maybe you guys need to like go over and have a little meeting and just try to walk through it and see.
Yeah, we can do that.
There's something wrong. There's no way we've only spent 5,600.
Yeah, no, that's definitely off.
Something is not right about it. And so we need to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we'll work on that.
And I have bumped, this budget up some because I, want to see more use, especially of these engineers, especially with regard to inspections
Mhm.
when necessary. I mean, the limiting factor really ends up being the time that they can provide us.
Mhm.
Pretty limited. And so, it's the budget has been more than what we spent, but not more than what we should have spent, if that makes any sense.
No, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I think we should have the full budget for an actual in-house engineer, some form of that. But that would be that's not in my budget.
Yeah, I don't know where it would live. You know, I'll probably work up those figures. I just don't know how we'd be able to add an expense like that because we know we were really talking about probably close to 200,000 a year
Mm-hmm.
between salary and benefits. I mean, even if you got somebody fresh out of engineering school, you know, you're probably still looking at least 100,000 a year in salary, and then 30 to 40 in benefits. So
Right.
it'd be a big jump up, and it's something that I think we need to talk about because it's the level of service both for us and for our citizens is not where it probably should be.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's not so much a decision about saving money or anything like that. It's more a level of service question. But
Mhm.
we're running into a really tight budget for next year, so I don't know how we would be able to afford it. I'll probably work up those figures anyway, just so we have them. But I wouldn't
Okay.
count on hiring an engineer anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Dave, it's almost like he's so maxed out already with all his other projects that if they could provide from their side, or maybe we use Jones and DeMille a little bit more and we do use up this 50,000 and just try to somehow encourage more engineering inspections and whatnot, would be good.
Yeah. All right. And I do
Okay.
think that Jones and DeMille has this year done some work and inspections, and so that's be another thing to check up on
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. They've done a little. Okay, then the cell phone allowance. You know who's getting what in your department?
I know I've looked at it before and I couldn't find it over the last day or so that I was kind of back in Cassell and I couldn't find that. Renee, are you still on with us or no? She probably had to go. But I did see that it was like $140 up until right when John left in July. And then, or right around there in June, July, it switched to $95 a month. So we, the 2022 budget didn't seem very high. I don't know exactly what to do with that. I'm thinking that it maybe should go up a little bit from the 1,800 or.
Well, so we just need to figure out who's getting what. So work with
Yeah.
Renee and just build the worksheet. So, you'll just build each employee out inside one of these little worksheets.
Right.
Like you've done
Yeah,
for the
I can
other
do that.
ones. So do that because that 2,500 is not, there's certain figures that are associated with these, and I know that 2,500 is not one of them. It's just not something
Oh, right.
that gets added.
Yeah,
up.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I thought I did a little bit of math behind that, but I must have just kind of threw that number out there. So we definitely have at least two of us that do use our phones with data and all the time for work. So, yeah, I'll have to just get with Renee and I'll figure that out.
Yeah, like I see, work with her and then build one of those little worksheets so we can see what it is.
Okay.
The 2160 would be like 2 data plans. But I don't know who has what in your office, so.
Right.
Okay, then the capital equipment is the lease on the code enforcement vehicle.
Right. Yep.
The other vehicles that planning and zoning might use are the two just sort of general purpose sedans. And I think we'll probably pay for that out of non-department. Because everybody will share them.
Okay.
If I needed it or a commissioner or whatever. All right, inventory. What is your inventory line made up of?
Last year, I think it was desks again, probably some things that John purchased for his office. He had that big monitor installed and a little conference table. We put in a fridge in our back break room area. So kind of just that kind of stuff, like, again, just kind of the getting the office a little bit better, more functional.
All right, so I guess what I'm saying is like, I like to have a detailed list of what you're gonna purchase in inventory.
Okay,
And just, sum it up so that we can see what exactly that line item's made up of.
yeah, I want to say there could be some computer replacements that Matt was talking about needed to happen. So I will find out exactly what those are, but that would come out of our budget, correct? Not IT's if they were.
Yeah, it comes out of your budget. So any
Yeah.
like computer replacement or, basically any purchase that's like under 5,000, that's not a consumable item.
Okay.
So yeah, desks, monitors, computers, blah, blah, blah. So, but I do like to see what that, I just don't want to see a number with no associated purchases.
Sure. Yeah. I hadn't gotten that far. Sorry. I was kind of looking to try to address the ones that were changing more than, and I wasn't really thinking about this one, not because it wasn't changing too much, but or not at all, maybe going down a little bit. Yeah, I can itemize that most definitely.
Okay, thank you. And schooling, last one.
Yep, so I can itemize this a little bit. I started to do this, actually. I was researching the different registration fees for the different conferences that we would be going to in 2023. I don't know if they would amount to 2,500, but it could be close to that. So I will itemize that as well.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, anybody have any questions for planning and zoning? Okay. All right, thanks, Elisa.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So I've got a couple of other funds I wanted to go over real quick. Fund 25 is what we call miscellaneous grants. I kind of stopped using this in a lot of cases, but there's still some use and some old grant money that's sort of in here that at some point we need to figure out what to do with. But so the thing about this fund 25, which is miscellaneous grants, and fund 27, is that each of these accounts in here are money that we track, like the balance rolls over from year to year, instead of just being reset like most of our other items. And so what that means is there's oftentimes going to be, for each item, and you can tell there's a lot of legacy accounts in here that are not used anymore. But for each item, there's going to be a new revenue line, which is revenue that comes in that's new. And then there's going to be a separate revenue line that's the balance that could come in from the bank that's sitting in our bank account already that we could draw out of. And so in the top here, you see SB 95 grant, EDC, Bear, Outdoor Rec Grant, Business Summit. These are all economic development related accounts. And I'm going to move all these expenses over to the Economic Development Department's budget. There is some fund balance for some of this stuff that I'm going to transfer over to the Economic Development Department this year. So I revised the calculation for the fund balance for EDC, outdoor rec fund balance, and the Business Summit fund balance. So these figures here are those fund balances that I'm going to transfer over to the Economic Development Department because they're all related to economic development, and then zero them all out and stop using them over here for the future. So some of the other ones that are active besides that, we used to funnel our Homeland Security grant through this, but we've since transitioned to having this grant operate out of Fund 17, which is our emergency management fund. And so the money just goes in there and it gets expended out of Fund 17 now. And so that's, going to be somewhat discontinued, although I see that there's some expense in there this year, so even though there's no budget. So that's probably whatever that expense is, I think needs to get recoded to Fund 17. Then there's this JAG grant, which is justice, like a public defender type grant that's been sitting in there a while. But I do think that we had some expenses this year for public defender, so we'll probably expend most of that money in 2022, and so I zeroed that budget out in 2023. The big operation that happens out of this fund is the part of the weed control budget. So we do get some grants, quite a few grants that come in for weed control in the county. So that comes into this fund. And there is a fund balance on it. Let me go take a look at it. So the fund balance that I calculated at the beginning of 2022 is $155,127. That really needs to get transferred over to the general fund because that's where a lot of the expenses come out of. And so I'm also thinking to just move the entire weed control budget into the general fund and then bring these grants into the general fund also, so that we can also stop using this, because it's a little confusing having it separated between the two. So there's like some of the employees are expensed out of this fund and some are expensed out of general fund. There's no good reason really for that, because we can bring the grant into the general fund and then just have all the weed department expenses just be in one spot. So I think that that's something I'll probably, work with Izzy on. And I'll transfer the balance over to the general fund and then just probably move the entire grant side over there also, so that all their employees are over there. There's no benefit that I can think of to having it split up like this. So in the past, we've had, some pretty big variations in the grant amounts that we've seen, 120,000 in 2020, 78,000. 2021, we're up to 46,000 this year. So I just kind of estimated about 80,000, but again, I'll work with Izzy on that. Like I said, I've got it kind of lined out here, but I'll probably end up moving this whole thing over to the general fund. Let's see if there's anything else. There's some other things to kind of cover. We've got a little bit of money that I think was either donated or somehow we received some money for the North Lions Park restoration, which is that UDWR grant they were just talking about with Elisa is basically that project. So we could transfer this money over to help out with our match for the North Lions Park program project. So that's another one that I think we could probably transfer over to help cover our $16,000 match. Then in the past, we've had this money for a long time, but we got a $65,000 grant, or that's the remainder of a grant for the county surveyor to mark the corners of townships. So that's just been sitting there, and it would have to be used by Lucas or the surveyor. It's been sitting there a long time, and I think Lucas is aware of it, but it just hasn't been done. So that money is still sitting there for corner location of the townships. Then in the past, we also got some money from the state. We're doing research on RS-2477 litigation and just inventorying roads. There's a little bit of a balance left there, and quite honestly, I think that the roads department probably has already spent that money. I'll have to talk with Bill about it, but it'd be nice to kind of transfer this out and get it out. And then there's a tiny little bit of money left over from a TSA grant we got for airport security. And the airport is actually wanting to do another TSA project, expand the office space out there for a machine of some kind. A baggage checking machine, I think, or something. So we could probably move this $500 over to help offset the cost of that. So as you can kind of guess, I'm, trying to stop using this fund.
Putting them to where the funds belong.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the miscellaneous grants. Then there's another fund that's similar, but it's not really so much grants, but other revenue that we get that needs to be tracked because it's oftentimes donations for specific purposes. And so we need to be able to track that what the donations came in for, and that we expend the money according to what people were donating the money for. So we've got search and rescue donations, kind of variable revenue stream, 23,000 in 2020, 27,000 in 2021. We're up to 13,917 in 2022. 20,000 is kind of what I'm projecting. And again, it's if we head into recession, donations are going to drop off. Then this is also where, if there's some felony occurs and there's some forfeited cash associated with some felony conviction, then we bring that money into this designated fund because it also has to be spent in a very particular way. So that's the federal criminal forfeiture. Some of these other ones, trying to look at the ones that are balanced on them poster sales. So these I'm talking about here are like new revenue that the assessor's office sells, like that big poster that's out by the jail, through their office, and they've been doing that since the 90s and never done anything with the money. It's just been piling up in this fund, and I'll get to the fund balance in a minute. But
Is that in this account because it's technically the recorder's to spend?
it's not the recorder, it's the assessor. But
I'm sorry, the assessor.
I called Debbie about it, and I said, do you know if there's any earmark for how that money is to be spent? And she said that she wasn't aware of it. So, we've oftentimes pondered how we might fund employee appreciation parties also, and that might be a good way to do it. Anyway, just these posters, so they just sell those posters and get a little bit of revenue every year. Then we get some contribution that the sheriff's office does, like a non-emergency transport, just drive somebody somewhere for a non-emergency situation. They usually charge a fee for that. That comes in here. The senior center also gets some donations. They've actually got a lot of donations this year, like 11,760. And then moving on to this other screen, more sheriff project donations. Surprisingly, people donate to the sheriff's office. I guess I shouldn't say that.
They always call and want to have you join that.
Yeah. And then this is also the fund where we do our fireworks. And so the fireworks, our budget for fireworks is 27,000. And currently, this is just sort of by informal agreement, the recreation district will pay 6,000. The city will pay 9,000, I think, and then we'll pay the remainder, whatever that is. And so the revenue, so there's a revenue side and an expense side, and it's both 27,000. So that's how the split goes. I've tried to negotiate a little better terms between all three parties because they used to split it evenly. But the rec district really can't do better than what they're doing right now. Then the building code training, this is like the classes that Bill puts on. There's a little bit of a balance in there, 5,200. There's also a donation account for the Dewey Bridge restoration that's sitting at $6,600. Only about, $2 million to go.
Always thought that was funny.
There's a state criminal forfeiture account. And the federal one. Then there's a fund balance. This is the fund balance in the sheriff's account, 11,000. A little bit built up in that emergency transport, which probably would, could be used for sheriff projects both. The SAR donation fund balance was 69,130. And then here's the poster cells that have built up over the years. It's up to 12,859. That's like selling those posters since the 90s and not spending any of the money.
You know, yeah, that's a good idea, because we talked about wanting to have more of a official way to recognize, you know, to maybe, I remember, didn't we used to have like a monthly or bi-monthly birthday party?
Jello of the Month Club?
No, they always brought good food. People brought potlucks. But I don't know, just, I do think that would be a good idea.
So anyway, that's, you know, a non-taxpayer funded way to potentially do some employee appreciation parties, potlucks, or whatever we decide.
Well, like somebody has a death in the family, send them some flowers, or,
Yeah.
you know, they, you know, so, you know, it'd be nice to have things like that. Means it goes a long ways.
So then again, building code training classes. Then we got this USU postage one. USU sometimes uses our postage machine. I kind of feel like this balance might be inaccurate though. I was talking to Janet Smith about it. Because it got built up, somehow some payments made their way into this account. And we might have to do more research, but Janet Smith kind of thought that it might have been their rent payment that accidentally showed up in this account. Because I don't, it was like, got built up over a few years where they were paying like $900 a year, which is way more than they would ever pay us for postage. So I kind of think that there might be some miscode that happened there where their rent payment got put in the wrong spot. I'll have to check in on that. And then the senior centers donation fund balance at the beginning of this year was 17,148. So that covers both of those funds. Again, you know, their main purpose is to track money that's restricted for particular grants or particular donation accounts. Anybody have any questions on those?
Oh, dropping balls.
All right. Well, I think that does it then for this agenda.
This was the longer one, wasn't it?
Yeah, they'll probably just get even longer.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sure
they
we're gonna
seem to.
start
I
pushing up
remember that.
against the, we're gonna start pushing up against the 5 o'clock time here, probably in the next few.
I won't be here next time, but
All
I'll
right.
make sure that,
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
make
Thanks
sure,
all.
make sure.
Everybody.